I will be getting to the condition of former President Biden and his revelation of cancer. Pray for the president. It's going to be painful at best. And there are big questions about what did everyone know and why weren't we told earlier. I'll come to that later in the show, but I begin today with our friend Haviv Rettig-Gur of the Times of Israel, where he's senior correspondent on conflicts. Haviv, where do we find you today?
I'm in Seattle, Washington. Beautiful
You're
city.
all over
Truly a
the
beautiful
place
place.
all the time. I'm never sure where I'm going to find you. Thank you for getting up a little bit early then in Seattle, Washington. Habib, we're talking on a day, I didn't set it up this way, but I became a grandfather again today for the seventh time, and I had in my notes to talk to you about,
Congratulations.
well, thank you. But I wanted to talk to you first about the badass grandfather who not your most recent episode of Ask Habib Anything, but two back. Aka Yoram Bar Sinai, architect, kibbutznik, and grandpa, who died at the age of 75 in a gun battle with Hamas terrorists while defending the home of his daughter Ruti in Kibbutz Be'eri. Yoram died in that firefight, but not before forcing the Hamas gunmen to give up on the house, saying his daughter and his grandchildren were inside. May his memory be a blessing. When I heard you say that, I thought, how could I not know that story, Haviv? How is that story not well known?
Hugh, there are hundreds of stories of heroes, of people who just got up and drove their personal private car into the firefight to rescue people, of parents and grandparents who, with some military background, some not, who came to the rescue of their kids, of members of a kibbutz who ran to where they thought the gunmen were. People ran toward the firefight, and there are hundreds of those stories, and we will never know some of them because they died, and no camera in the street saw it. No, there's no footage from Hamas about that particular moment. So there are heroes that we will never hear about. And just to say, heroes are produced in moments of failure. You don't, if a military operation is perfectly planned and executed well, there are no heroes coming out of it. Heroes come when things fall apart. Everything fell apart on October 7th, and so there are tremendous numbers of heroes.
Well, I must say, grandfather Yoram Bar Sinai, that's pretty amazing. He's 75 years old. Grandparents serve when they're younger and they are served when they're older. He's right in the sweet spot being 75. But to hold off a half dozen or more Hamas terrorists from a front door with your grandchildren behind you, that's a movie. It's not believable. I may his memory be a blessing. How do people sponsor editions of Ask Haviv Anything that way?
Thank you for asking. You email me at Haviv, Haviv, at askhavivanything.com. Or maybe it's .org. I really should know when asked. But
Yeah.
and we'll talk to you about it. And it's not very expensive, and it's a beautiful thing, by the way, that sponsors have asked for, dedicating episodes to the memory of people who died on October 7th. That wasn't our idea. Sponsors asked for it again and again and again. And Yoram was, he's an architect who designed many of the public buildings in the area. He also was a man who traveled throughout Africa as an advisor on how to build better cities and better buildings, and brought his expertise to development in the third world. Um, it's yeah, a lot of these people on these kibbutzim are the best kinds of people.
Well, that's pretty remarkable. Haviv, in the course of the last few Ask Haviv Anything, I had a number of questions. First of all, you have alluded to the years you spent in Wisconsin. How many years did you spend in Wisconsin?
4 years. My high school years were in Nicolay High School, Glendale, Wisconsin. Go Knights.
Do you root for the Wisconsin Big Red? Are you a University of Wisconsin college football fan, or did that stay behind in the United States?
No, after high school, I went back to Israel to the Army, so I don't have any affiliation or affection for Wisconsin
Okay.
college teams, but I was a very big Packers fan, and I
Oh,
remain a Packers fan, even though I have
oh.
been gone 25 years.
Well, we may have to end this relationship at some point then, Haviv, because I'm a
I'm
Browns
sorry.
fan,
I'll
and
die on this hill.
as much success as you've had, we've had no success. Here's what I want to ask you about primarily. I don't know if you have listened to Dan Senor's State of World Jewry speech yet. but in it is the proposition that Israel's fine and American Jews are not. What do you make of that proposition?
So first of all, I admire Dan, and I think he's a very profound and serious person, and he knows American Jewry better than I do. Um, and the deep social level, at levels of social cohesion and community and general happiness of human life, Israel is much stronger than a lot of American society, which is, I mean, there's Americans are talking about this constantly. I'm not introducing anything new to the conversation, but there's this kind of disintegration of family, of the corner church, of community. And in that sense, I think that, that's driving that kind of breakdown in a lot of social structures is driving a radicalization. The social media algorithms are driving radicalization. The fact that Americans used to live next to people who voted the opposite way from them and today almost never do. And so all they know is people who agree with them, and that also radicalizes. So I think America is going through socially, even if economically it's a massive success story and will continue to be for generations, socially it's going through a breakdown. And I share his concern. And Jews are facing some of that whirlwind because a lot of it is expressed as anti-Semitism, from the Candace Owens and Ian Carroll being interviewed by Joe Rogan to talk about how Jews rape children and just classic old insane anti-Semitism is coming to the fore because of this social crisis.
Well, what Dan's argument was, the solution for American Jewry is immersion of their children in Jewish experience, whether Jewish day school or Jewish camp during the summer. And I get that. That's just sort of the Roman Catholic culture of my youth. You were immersed in it. You couldn't not get it out of you. You couldn't get it out of you if you tried, if you were immersed in it as a young person. But I'm wondering about the APAC strategy, and if you have thoughts on that, which was, I talked about it with current President Trump last week, about how Israel's influence in America's Congress has declined. The anti-Israel power has increased. And he kind of marveled how that had happened in his lifetime, how Israel had gone from being, you didn't mess with Israel in Congress, to you don't even think twice about messing for Israel because that'll get you in trouble. To what do you attribute that?
I think, this is not a place where I'm an expert. I think that, however, a lot of the discourse around Israel among young people has changed very fundamentally because a lot of the ideological debates have changed fundamentally. Some of it, I think, frankly, Israel's fault. We've just been in a terrible war for 19 months, a kind of war that is necessarily fought in an urban environment. At the very least, 10,000 civilians died in Mosul in the America-Iraq Kurdish war there to root out ISIS. But everybody understood what ISIS was, and everybody understood that there was an end game here that was going to be a good end game, and that America would be there to help rebuild also. It wasn't about destruction. And Israeli leaders in the last 19 months have spoken like absolute morons and have right now, for 19 months, there has not been starvation in Gaza, and the claims of starvation in Gaza by some organizations that we should be able to trust. But when it comes to political, when it comes to their politics, it overwhelms their professionalism, and we simply can't trust them. They have claimed there's starvation in Gaza. There were a few small pockets, and we've talked about this in the past, and specific operations for a limited time, where there really were supply problems, but there has not been starvation in Gaza. And now, because it's a whole new strategy to actually uproot Hamas, to deny Hamas control of aid, which they were using as leverage over the civilian population, there actually is going to be hunger in Gaza pretty soon. And now the Israelis, yesterday, Netanyahu gave the order to begin to allow aid in, and they're building out a new aid mechanism that is meant to bypass Hamas. But talk about it, say it, talk about how Gazans won't starve. Talk publicly, openly. If Netanyahu asks to go on CNN or puts out a TikTok video, that's going to go viral. Everyone will see it. He can speak to the world. The Israeli government can say, we're not going to allow people to go hungry in Gaza. We're also not going to allow Hamas to continue to control a civilian population that is now desperate to get rid of Hamas. We're seeing unbelievably brave protests against Hamas. Whole movements are being born in Gaza, putting out public statements against Hamas. And we're not going to allow Hamas to continue to control that population through control of aid. And Hamas is willing to have them all starve to death, whereas we are not. Say those words. Now, functionally, that's what's going to happen. Gazans are not going to starve to death. The Israelis are going to bring in supplies. But this idea that you have to look tough and say insane things and allow the far right to talk about ethnic cleansing is an Israeli self-own. And Israel, when you're going to be that incompetent, you deserve the blowback. So both there's
Hold it right there. We'll come back throughout today's program. I taped Haviv in the last hour for 45 minutes. All of it is at my YouTube channel. If you do at YouTube, please like and subscribe. I'm taking my Relief Factor right now because I did a lot this morning. Did 6. Flew yesterday back from the north where we were working on Studio North. Got my 10K in on Saturday. Packed and came down yesterday. Got up this morning, did my 6, and have been preparing since and looking forward to it. As I told Haviv Reddy Gore, we're very happy. We have a new grandchild, and so we're having a very good day here in the Hewitt household. And I would recommend to all of you that you have as many grandchildren as you can. When you're young, you have to serve them, but when you're old, they have to serve you. That's the deal with being a grandparent. Relief Factor, make sure that you're able to serve them, because you can pick them up as often as you have to, whether they're 8 pounds or 18 pounds or 28 pounds, and then that's when you really stop that. But you can go to their games and follow them and do everything that grandparents are supposed to do without flagging or failing. You can also do 6 miles and 6 miles and 6 miles and 6 miles, or 3 miles and 1 mile and not feel the effects of Relief Factor. Just make sure you call 1-800, the number 4 and the word relief, and ask for the starter pack. No sense in paying full freight until you try it. Try it for 3 weeks, 3 times a day, each day for 3 weeks. That's what a 3-week starter pack is. Get the levels of Icarian, curcumin, resveratrol, omega up in your body and feel better for doing it. Now, I'm not a spring chicken, but I can get my 20 to 30 miles in a week. If you will go to relieffactor.com, so can you, relieffactor.com. I'm joined now by Olivia Beavers of the Wall Street Journal, who's been following for us. You're always in front of the same painting, Olivia. Where are you?
I'm at home. I sometimes do the hits from the Wall Street Journal, but my mom made a painting from our home, so it's kind of my favorite little backdrop.
Your mom did that?
Yeah, and it's for people who are listening, it's a huge painting of the Blue Ridge
Would you
Mountains.
step aside for a second so we can move aside a little bit? That's amazing. Can I get one?
I will tell her. The couch hides it a little bit, but it has my house that I grew up in the background in the shadows.
Oh,
so
that's wonderful.
She did her
All right,
job.
so bring us up to speed. There was a vote on the budget committee late, Saturday night, or was it last night?
Sunday at 10 o'clock. I think they're trying to let this be the death of all of us who like to go to bed at a normal time. But so on the budget committee, essentially this moves it forward. It's not yet ready to hit the House floor. It has to go through the House Rules Committee first. But there were 4 conservative holdouts who wanted to get promises from leadership on, moving up the date that work requirements go into effect for able-bodied people on Medicaid, similar things like that. They had issues with the IRA, but those were some of the big issues that they were pushing for leadership to do, which starts creating a little bit more tension with what the centrists and moderates are okay with when it comes to Medicaid. But they said that they felt like there was being progress made. So in the end, around 11 p.m. last night, Congressman Ralph Norman, Congressman Roy, Burkeen, Clyde, they all voted present. And they will, Roy and Norman will have a chance on the Rules Committee if they feel like what it's going to be a manager's amendment doesn't do enough that they want it to do.
So a manager's amendment will be made. When does the Rules Committee meet? Is that Wednesday night?
It's Wednesday at 1 a.m. So I've never really seen a 1 a.m. markup hearing for being scheduled,
What?
But apparently that's
why.
Yes. Apparently, I saw this from Brendan Buck, who used to work for Paul Ryan, and he said he's heard that it was because Democrats get 48 hours to write a sort of minority response, and then they have to basically notify the hearing with an hour's time after that deadline, which puts them right up at 1 a.m. And I think the what you're sort of seeing with the 10 p.m. hearing yesterday, the 1 a.m. hearing on Wednesday, is Republicans, especially leadership, are trying to say, look, we're trying to reach this deadline that we set and promised you, and we will do it. Instead of waiting till 8 a.m., we'll do it at 1 a.m. And
Well, that means
know,
that they've got over the budget committee hurdle. They got to get over the rules committee hurdle. Then they've got to defeat any malign amendments on the floor. Then they have to pass it and send it to the Senate. Then the Senate has to pass it out of committee and onto the floor and out of the floor after no cloture needed. It's reconciliation. So we could actually get this done by July 4, right?
that's what they're aiming for, and it won't surprise you. I think that the big person who holds a lot of power in the party, President Trump, is reportedly expected to make an appearance tomorrow on the Hill as he tries to muscle the different sides together and pass this bill. It's a huge priority for him, and I think that they're trying to get this done before September 30th starts rolling up, and they have to do appropriations bills. So,
Olivia,
I think
don't know if you'll
that
get
is
this or
truly the
not.
goal.
I don't know if you'll get this or not, but if I were the president, I would bring in one of those big Starbucks cartons, and I would say, coffee is for closers. And that's it. That's all I'd say. Coffee is for closers. Do you even get that? Have you ever seen Tin
Oh,
Men?
I don't know. I feel like I'm easily bribed by coffee. That's what I was laughing
No.
at.
Coffee is for closers. A line by from Tin Man. If I had a producer, I'd play it for you. So, generally speaking, is the Senate on a smoother path?
Well, I think the Senate has been sort of openly saying that they're probably not going to keep things that exactly as is that the House sends over. And so I think you might see one of those sort of moments of clashing between the two chambers just from different ideas of what this bill should look like after the Senate gets it. But I think that it's expected to be on a pretty easy path. It's just you're going to see in both the House and after the Senate has it, sort of the scramble of what the final bill actually looks like. And, you know, everyone in a thin majority seems to have a lot more leverage. So we're going to
I
probably
am
see a lot of scrambling and the president weighing in.
I'm hoping we get more good news from you next week, Olivia Beavers. Follow Olivia at Olivia_Beavers from the Wall Street Journal and write to her and ask for her mother's commission cost because that's a heck of a painting, Olivia. Thank you so much. I want to let everyone know as well. Generalissimo, if you're around, my PhD weight loss, 864. I guess I caught him not. Is he asleep? Somebody wake up Dwayne.
I'm here.
864
644
1900. That's
864
644
1900.
So I was listening to Dwayne's World on my Trundle this morning. I didn't get to the lilacs part yet. And I noticed it didn't begin with anything about the Hugh Hewitt show. Just wanted to say.
I didn't begin the lilacs part
No, the
or the whole show.
The whole show.
I did too.
No.
Okay.
No. Just saying.
I'm
always
sure
checking.
I did.
No, I'm Voldemort. And if I had my Azerbaijan, what do they call those ghouls up in Azerbaijan? You know, the bad guys.
I don't know. What do you?
Well, if you go to myphdweightloss.com, you can be as skinny as Dwayne. 864
644
1900. He lost 50 pounds, but he lost his memory about the show the way he's supposed to start.
I
864
know I covered it.
864
644
1900. Not the way it's like the way you're covering this now. 864
644
1900. That's
864
644
1900.
Yeah, you guys go listen to Dwayne's World and you'll know I'm right. MyPhDweightloss.com. It works. Alfredo Ortiz is the president of Job Creators Network, and I don't know if he has his glasses on. Yes, he does. He wears them as a courtesy to me, Hugh Hewitt, because I always recognize Alfredo when he has his glasses on. But it's like Clark Kent. He's like Clark Kent. Mild-mannered Alfredo turns into the Billboard man when his band cancels on him. You should have seen him last week when the band canceled on him. How are you, Alfredo? Were you happy?
I am doing great. I love being compared to Superman Clark Kent. I'll take Superman any day.
I've told people about the band canceling on you. I said they picked the wrong guy to cancel on because they were conservatives. I'm not going to go into that anymore. I don't want to get into your lawsuit stuff. But Alfredo, the big win at the budget committee last night. Are you optimistic?
I am very optimistic. I actually have lunch with Speaker Johnson tomorrow, and I'm sure this will be the topic of conversation. Off to the Rules Committee, hopefully by Wednesday, floor vote Thursday. I mean, they should have this, hopefully, as long as you don't have those 3 or 4 defectors, the normal crew that do defecting on them. We should have the vote sealed up and ready to go by Memorial Day.
Hey, Alfredo, do you have a pen with you?
I do.
Okay, would you write this down since you're having lunch with Speaker Johnson? Hugh Hewitt would like to be on the Battlefield Monuments Commission. All right, that's
Got
all.
it.
It's just a little
Battlefield Monuments Commission.
Yeah, that's it. That's just a little thing. The budget committee
problem.
had 4 abstentions. What do we make of that? Is that troubling?
Well, no, I mean, it's kind of the usual group, I won't mention names, Chip Roy, but, it's
I
kind of
like
the
Chip.
usual
Chip and I are
folks.
back channeling. We're back channeling, by the way.
Look, I mean, I understand. I like Chip. I mean, we're friends. I get where he's going, but the one thing that they don't talk about when they balk over the spending, not enough spending cuts, is they don't talk about something that's really wonky. And I hate doing wonky stuff on your show, Hugh, but we got to remember that all of this is what's called static, right? When they do the scoring, it's all static. It's not actually dynamic. It doesn't take into account that the revenues actually will go up. We know this will go up because it happened last time. We know it for a fact, right? So the revenues are actually go up. So the deficit that they say is going to be, is going to grow because of these tax cuts doesn't take into account the revenue growth that's going to come because of them. So, I mean, let's be fair, right? And make sure that we take and look at all of the sides. And I don't think that they are. And I think they're a little bit of grandstanding. And I just don't like that. We've got to move forward. We got to get this bill on the desk of Donald Trump by the 4th of July for him to sign.
Yeah, there are engines of growth here, like 100% expensing. There's also a little bit of a tax hike on the small businesses from 20% to 23%. I gather we're okay with that, Alfredo?
Well, it's not a tax hike. Actually, it's a huge benefit. It's actually the deduction went from 20% to 23%. So we were really excited about that. Yes, yeah, that's actually a huge benefit. Yes, no, that's great. So we were actually advocating for it to increase to 25%. We got 23%. So I'll take that every single day and twice on Tuesday.
All right. Did you get any public financing for new Cleveland Browns stadium in there?
I don't think so. But if you want one, we'll try to get one in there.
That's after the Battlefield Monument Commission. Alfredo, all kidding aside, you guys are working around the clock at taxcutsnow.com, taxcutsnow.com. Is anybody in the grassroots of the groups against this, or are all the groups for this?
I mean, we really are for it. I mean, the significant groups that have been loud voices, were loud voices and partners in our fight back in 2016, 2017. We're in it as well. I mean, you've got Grover Norquist, Steve Moore, Ralph Reed, ourselves, Alec, Jonathan Williams, and Lisa Nelson. I mean, all the great crew. We're all fighting for it. It's a great team. But again, we got to make sure we do this right. We got to rally around the president. He's working hard on the tariffs. Bessent's working hard on the tariffs. We got to make sure that we deliver on these tax cuts because this 1-2 punch for the economy is going to be huge. And I really do believe that this is going to be set America on such an enormous expansion for an economy standpoint that deficit concern is going to go away pretty quickly.
It's going to absolutely lead to a takeoff that we need to get productivity above 4% GDP for a while. And it's all in that bill. We just need to push it along and move it quickly because the sooner we get it across the finish line, the sooner it takes effect. Go to taxcutsnow.com. Consider it an insurance policy that Alfredo has put together for you just to let everyone in Congress know, especially your congressmen and your senators, that you support taxcutsnow.com. Thank you, Alfredo. Talk to you again next week. AndrewandTodd.com are great sponsors of the Hugh Hewitt Show. Andrew Del Rey's been my friend for 25 years. I'm in a Bible study with him again. I was out of it for 8 years when I moved back to the Beltway. I'm in Studio Beltway today. And so they threw me out, but then they went to Zoom. And then they invited me back in, and I'm slow. By mid-June, I will be back fully as a member. But that doesn't matter. You don't care who's in my Bible study. You should care that Andrew Del Rey and Todd Avakian are the world's best lenders. That's because they're with a bank, Sierra Pacific Mortgage. That means they are actually lending you the money. They underwrite the loan, soup to nuts. They start with, okay, tell us what you're looking for. Tell us about your income. Tell us if you're selling a house. Let's check out your credit score. They always warn you when they check out your credit score, you'll get a notice from Experian and everybody else that your credit score is coming in. And they'll do all that. And then they'll help you fix your credit score. And then they'll say, where are you moving? How much equity do you have to put down? They'll go through it all. If you're a veteran, you don't have to put down anything. If you're a first-time home buyer, there are special programs. If you're a senior citizen living in your primary residence, you can do a reverse mortgage. HELOCs are back. Home equity lines of credit. You just set it up in case you need it. HELOCs are back. And AndrewandTodd.com do them all. And they do them well, and they do them fast. 888-888-1172. The platinum standard in lending. Sierra Pacific Mortgage, AndrewandTodd.com. Great, good friends of mine. Andrew for 25 years, Todd for half that time, and they're fabulous guys. I saw them when I was in California in the winter. AndrewandTodd.com. I'm in a pretty good mood because brand new grandbaby today, number 7. And, for the first few years, as I told Aviv Rediger, and I'll play part 2 of that in an hour or two, you serve your grandchildren, and then when you get old, they serve you. At least that's the way it worked with me and AT. AT went to 101 on his own wheels in his own house. I should be so lucky. But AT didn't have to get up to get anything. Mostly he wanted bourbon. I don't drink, but mostly he wanted bourbon, and we would refill the glass. Because it really didn't matter at 101, right? And we just are ecstatic. Very, very happy. Mother and baby are fine. And that brings me around to Angel Tree. It's the first day for Angel Tree. I do this every year. Angel Tree is the summer camping division of Prison Fellowship. They make sure that the children of men and women who are incarcerated get to go to summer camp. A week outside. A week with water gun fights and shaving cream fights and raids on other cabins. A week of bad food and mosquito bites. A week of splinters and shooting at targets and archery that doesn't hit anywhere near the target. A week of bears, if you happen to be up in Big Bear, that they're perfectly peaceful bears. They just like to sleep on the side of the Calvin Crest, whatever they call that up there, where my kids went. A week that every kid deserves every summer. And you can make that happen. It doesn't cost that much for a single child. I don't even know what it costs for $200. $200 to send a kid to camp. Makes me think of my friend Brian the banker. Brian and my friend Glenn had a auction over a Boston Red Sox hat that I had to buy, and they ended up sending 5 kids to camp that year. And that was just wonderful. Brian went to his reward this year, and Glenn went back to work. And so they're both great Americans, and they have kids on their heart, as I hope you do too. These children have done nothing wrong, but often they're living in difficult circumstances with grandma or grandpa or foster care. And Angel Tree gets a connection with them. Not only do they get them to camp, not only do they have a safe and wonderful week, not only do they roast marshmallows and have bad hot dogs and sing bad songs, they come back alive and connected to Prison Fellowship volunteers, and they know they are loved. Give a listen to Betsy Wright, who's the senior director of Angel Tree Camping.
We hear it all the time that they're so excited to go and then they're crying on the way home because it was just such a great experience and they don't want to leave. Like, what an impact to be able to see kids in your situation that maybe went to camp and now they're working at camp and they are making a difference in the lives of others, and to see that, hey, I can do that too. It's just amazing.
Now, $200 is a lot of money. I know that. But you can change the trajectory of a child's life if you'll be that generous. There's a banner at the top of HughHewitt.com. You cannot miss it. It says, Angel Tree Camping on the front's got little kids outside. You can't miss it. Or you can call 888-206-2764. 888-206-2764. I'm going to be asking you 3 times a day for the next 2 weeks. And I'm going out with the Hillsdale Cruise for 11 broadcast days. And Dwayne and Kurt and Mark and Ed will be asking you. And if you don't listen to me, listen to them. It really is a fabulous thing that you're doing. That which you do for the least of me, you do for them. Maybe celebrate Leo's ascension if you're Catholic. His elevation. That can be your hurrah. Good for that. That's a good thing. That's the Angel Tree banner at the top of HughHewitt.com. Now, speaking of summer, grads and dads. I am a dad and a granddad, but I already have a besthotgrill.com. I have 2 Solaire infrared grills. You ought to get one if you're a dad. You notice how I put that marker down with Alfredo? I said the Battlefield Monuments Commission. Well, just leave a sign lying around, besthotgrill.com. Send it to your kids. Send them a postcard, besthotgrill.com. And then they'll know that's what you want for Father's Day or Grandfather's Day. You want a grill that heats to 1,000 degrees in 3 minutes. You want a grill that saves the best juices in the meat. You want a grill that does it all. That's besthotgrill.com. Solaire infrared grills, made in America, taken care of in America. Dwayne and I swear by them. We have them. We know Rhett and Irene. We just want you to be as happy as we are with our steaks. Dwayne does fish. I don't do fish. I just do besthotgrill.com. Learn more about these amazing grills over there. And you can try it before you buy it. besthotgrill.com. By the way, we've already posted all of the Haviv Reddy Gore interview. It's 45 minutes long. We'll play part 2 coming up at the start of hour number 2. I will come to Joe Biden's condition fairly soon. Pray for the former president, diagnosed with metastatic prostate cancer. It's going to be painful at best, could be fatal. It's very, very advanced. I don't believe any of them. I don't believe them. They lied to us about everything about him for 5 years. I don't believe he didn't know, but I still pray for him. But we need some hearings into when he became incapacitated. It is that simple. Wall Street Journal this morning, Biden diagnosed with metastatic prostate cancer. Joe Biden's prostate cancer diagnosis, the outlook for the advanced disease, around 37% of patients with metastatic prostate cancer are alive 5 years afterwards. There are stories everywhere. And pray for the president. I lost my mom to metastatic breast cancer, and it was a difficult going. It is an unfortunate treatment. It's hard on everyone, and you won't hear me say anything other than a prayer for the president. I do not believe Team Biden has been honest with us, ever. I don't believe they were honest with him. There's frail, there's infirm, there's incapacitated, there's incoherent. And he was always infirm, and I think he became incapacitated. He was often incoherent. This has got nothing to do with his mental acuity and his decline cognitively. It's got to do with the fact that they just weren't honest with the American people. The 25th Amendment failed. He ought to have resigned the office. He did not resign the office. He ought to have been removed. And we clearly need a different 25th Amendment. We clearly need something that is triggered by perhaps the leaders of both houses of Congress, or 2 out of the 4, the big 4, the Speaker and the Minority Leader, the Senate Majority Leader and the Senate Minority Leader. 2 out of 4 can summon the Cabinet. The Cabinet can debate it and decide whether or not to remove the president. But it can't happen like this again, because what we knew, they knew. And I don't believe for a moment, White House doctors took care of me, not so greatly, when I was a junior staffer. But when they're taking care of the president, they get the best. Now, I get an annual physical. I get a PSA every year. It stayed the same, knock on wood, and I've been getting an annual physical since I was 40, for decades and decades. And it stayed the same. But I've had so many friends with prostate cancer, nobody stops getting their prostate number from the PSA. Nobody that I know. And this whole idea that, you stop after 70, that's nonsense. If you get an annual physical, and the president does, you get a blood test and a lab workup. And they look at everything to see how your liver is doing, and your glucose level, and are you a diabetes or pre-diabetic, everything. And they would have seen a PSA. and they chose not to tell us. Now, I don't know if his decision years ago was not to have it treated. Some people make that decision, but I don't believe right now that people have been telling us the truth about Joe Biden for years. And I think the Democratic Party, where's the Van Jones piece? What cut is that? Cut number 17, please. We'll start it.
It's just not true.
Van, the big question is what now? What now for Democrats? And over the past week, we've seen some potential 2028 candidates, Pete Buttigieg, Governor Whitmer, Governor Pritzker, saying that they didn't know that this was going on, that they didn't know that there were any acuity or cognition issues. We've heard, I was busy working, I was too far away, I didn't see it. What do you think Democrats need to say? What is the right thing for Democrats to say? You heard Jim Clyburn acknowledge that possibly the party's low standing in polls does have to do with this.
Look, I think before you get out there trying to say stuff and persuade other people, you've got to look inside. In 2024, we got beat by...
How hard is it to say the truth? I want to remind everyone that with this week, I launched my annual appeal to you to help send kids to camp, kids who have mom and or dad behind bars, kids who deserve a week in the woods, go to the pond, go canoeing, shoot the BB guns, fire the arrows, have the water balloon fights and the shaving cream fights, stay up too late, roast marshmallows, chase each other around, raid the counselor, all the stuff you do that you're a kid. And it makes for a wonderful summer. And Angel Tree camps have been doing this for so long. Costs $200 to send a kid to camp, and they have to make plans now on how many camps they open and how many weeks they are open for and how many counselors they get. So they need people to go to the banner now over at hughhewitt.com. And please be generous. Costs $200. Or you can call in the phone number, 888-206-2764, 888-206-2764. Angel Tree does the job. Please be a part of this great work. I began the show with an interview I taped in the hour before my program began with Haviv Rettig-Gur, who is in Seattle, Washington on a tour of the States. Haviv has become a go-to commentator on all things Israel. Let's pick up. It's all posted at my YouTube channel if you want to watch it start to finish without interruption or commercial. But that's at Hugh Hewitt and YouTube. Like and subscribe when you go. But here's part 2 of my conversation with Haviv Rettig-Gur, senior correspondent on conflict for the Times of Israel, host of Ask Haviv Anything.
Cultural thing happening in America. There's this, progressive discourse and a little bit of the woke right and a little bit of anti-Semitism mixed in. And there's also an Israeli incompetence in managing this moment. And those two things, I think, have fundamentally changed the environment in the United States. And I like AIPAC. I think they're right. I think they're good. I've met a lot of left-wingers at AIPAC, a lot of right-wingers at AIPAC, but Israel has to also play ball.
Yeah, there's this post 10/7 America about which you're absolutely on target, but the sewer lids came off on 10/8 in America, and all of this venomous bile burbled up about which we were unaware. And the question then became, and I was listening when Dan talked the State of the World Jewry speech that he gave at the 92nd Street Y this past week. It's a remarkable speech, but it's about what Jews have to do for Jews. And I kept listening to it. I'm not Jewish. I'm a friend of Israel for a variety of reasons, none of them eschatological, by the way, for the benefit of people out there. I know some people are like that, but that's not me. I'm amazed that AIPAC doesn't spend more time making friends among Gentiles in the West and not spending all of its time on organizing its Jewish colleagues and compatriots. Are you?
I can't speak for AIPAC. I'm not a spokesman of AIPAC, but there's something I know about them. There are a lot of American Jewish organizations, and some of them call themselves, defense organizations, and they deal with anti-Semitism, and they try to defend Jews and protect Jews. They often suffer from terrible mission creep. In other words, a donor shows up and says, hey, I want you to go to campuses to help Jewish kids on campus. I want you to go to Jewish schools and help teach kids at schools. And I want you to do all these things. And if a donor is found to fund it, they'll go do that thing. And they end up doing 40 different things and not one of them well. And there are other organizations that have a very different strategy. like AIPAC, where they're a little bit like the Air Force. They only do one thing. And if they do it well, everybody succeeds. And if they don't do it well because they have mission creep and they also went to campuses and they also went to other places, then they actually lose the ability to do the one thing we need from them. So AIPAC is an organization that will say no to a donor who wants them to go off mission. They're very, very mission focused. Leaving aside Jews, leaving aside Israel, in general, organizations should look like AIPAC and not like organizations that will do anything any donor asks them to do. So I don't know. I think that AIPAC is not a place where I bring any complaints to. The rest of the Jewish organized world really is very confused about this moment. You know, they're still trying to put out press releases about anti-Semitism when 50% of the kids get all their news on TikTok, and there are no real serious organized Jewish efforts on TikTok. So I think the Jews have discovered they don't have the institutions for this moment.
When you find someone like Douglas Murray, who is your age and your generation and wildly effective in making the case for Israel as a Gentile to other Gentiles, where do you think he came from? How do you reverse engineer Douglas Murray to engineer more Douglas Murrays in the future?
I actually think we can't find or make Douglas Murrays. Douglas has been fighting a fight on much larger issues affecting Western civilization, on big questions of immigration and integration. He's not, as I understand him, I apologize to him for trying to represent him, but as I understand him, he's not opposed to immigration, but it has to be integrated immigration. And mass immigration that doesn't integrate is a huge problem. And so he's concerned about a lot of much larger issues. And in that much larger sort of fight, as he sees it, for the future of the character of Western civilization and liberalism and democracy, he sees Israel as one front in that war, not necessarily because he thinks the Israelis are like amazing and perfect in every way. I've heard him criticize Israel, but because Israel's enemies are very much the enemies of Western civilization and liberalism and modernity and all the good things that we're supposed to like. And so he loves Israel, but he's not Israel. In other words, he's fighting a different war in which Israel fits in that larger war.
I'm so glad you said that. That was the answer I was fishing for. I think our problem in the United States is that we've lost a grasp of Western civilization. And that I've been teaching con law for 30 years, and the first lecture is always the same. You got here, you have your individual story to my few dozen law students, but there's a collective story, and you've got to know the Jews, the Greeks, the Romans, the Brits, and the Americans to understand your story. And the Jews started, and that's where Western civilization gets started, along with Athens. And I don't think that the modern generation knows Western civilization, so it can't appreciate the contribution of the Jews. What do you make of my theory?
I intellectually, in terms of the intellectual history of the West, I agree 100%. The difference between the Jews' one God and, you know, some other people's 3 gods or 1,000 gods isn't numerical. It's categorical. In other words, one God is infinite God. One God is an all-encompassing God. And one God also is a universalizing idea for humanity. In other words, Jewish law learns from the first 2 chapters of Genesis, which are 2 different versions of the creation story, that all people are equal. All people are equal because all are the children of God, to the point where when the genocidal army of Pharaoh is drowning in the sea after the crossing of the sea by the Israelites, and they start singing because they have been rescued from this genocidal army coming, A, to murder them, B, to take them back into slavery. The angels, the Talmud says, are starting to sing alongside the Jews for this great miracle that God created. And God turns to the angels and says, how can you sing when my children are drowning in the sea? In other words, the genocidal army chasing the Jews to return them to slavery are also his children. So there's this idea of universality that a single God allows for, that I think the Jews introduced into world history. And that absolutely is the beginning, certainly, of what would become Western morality, like Christian morality, etc. There was a Jewish philosopher. We're really off the topics we usually cover. There's a Jewish philosopher named Franz Rosenzweig who talked about who actually was going to convert to Christianity and then chose not to, and actually became one of the most significant Jewish thinkers of Judaism in the 20th century. But he never lost his love for Christianity, and he talked about how Judaism was the candle and Christianity was the light. And that is how this idea of universalist morality spread through the world. And so there is this absolutely origin story of some of the profound ideas of Western civilization in Judaism. I don't think you can get away from it.
So in the 1960s, and I will connect
Pause
this
right
back
there.
up. Let's pause right there. That way I can come back later if you're watching on the Salem News Channel. We'll pick it up there. Again, if you want to listen to the entire interview unbroken into segments with Haviv Reddy Gur, Times of Israel senior reporter on conflict, go over and go to the Hugh Hewitt YouTube channel. Watch it discreetly or like and subscribe. We only put up the most important interviews. I do want to tell everyone about the market report brought to you by AmericanFederal.com. My friend Nick Grovich at American Federal will buy and sell gold with you if you call him at 800-221-7694, 800-221-7694. It was a good day on the market because nothing went down. The Dow went up 1/3 of a point, the S&P up almost 0.09%, and the NASDAQ a little burp into green, 0.02. Gold went up 1.5%. to $3,235 an ounce over the Sunday price. So if you waited and bought on the dip on the weekend, you're really smart. But I don't do that. I just believe in buying gold to diversify your portfolio. And if you're going to do that, or silver or platinum or whatever you want, do it with Nick and a team you can trust that's been doing it for 42 years. I buy my gold from Nick, did it most recently in January. I recommend them to everyone. 1-800-221-7694. 1-800-221-7694, or go to AmericanFederal.com. That's AmericanFederal.com. The dip is still the dip. So if you're going to buy on the dip, buy now from Nick Grovich at AmericanFederal.com. Senator Tom Cotton's been a regular guest on our program for a long time. He is chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee. He represents the great state of Arkansas, and he is third-ranking Republican in the Senate. Senator Cotton is also a graduate of Harvard Law School, knows his way around the Constitution, was on judiciary for a long time. Senator, the story about Joe Biden is tragic. It's no fun having metastatic prostate cancer that's gone to your bones. It'll be painful even if he recovers. But do you feel as though Team Biden was telling us the truth about anything ever?
I think that's an open question. And while we certainly wish Joe Biden all the very best for a full and speedy recovery and send our prayers to the Biden family, I'm not sure they deserve the benefit of the doubt on this question, given the way they demonstrably covered up his mental decline, as we could all see at the time. But as now we also know from new reporting, in which, amusingly enough, reporters keep trying to point the finger at Democrats as if the Democrats were the ones who covered it up and not the media in league with the Democrats. Although we wish Joe Biden all the best for full and speedy recovery and send our prayers to him and his family, I think there are questions to be asked about either the quality of care he was receiving as president or what and how forthcoming the president and his family and the senior team were with the American people.
Now, Senator, the 25th Amendment provides in Section 4, whenever the vice president and a majority of either the principal officers of the executive departments or such other body as Congress may by law provide, transmit to the president pro tem of the Senate and the Speaker of the House a written declaration of the blah, blah, blah. Do you think we need to maybe have a statute on such other body as the Congress provides? You don't have to get an amendment through Congress. You just need a joint resolution.
I haven't given enough thought. I will say that I think the 25th Amendment in some ways was poorly drafted and has within it the seeds of potential crises in the future. So I would be a little reluctant to take authority away from persons who've been elected by the American people or confirmed by us in the Senate. I think the best thing to do would have had a president and his family and administration that would level with the American people. Even a cancer diagnosis, at least certain kinds of cancers, is not something that would cause the 25th Amendment to be invoked. You know, and I know, and I suspect most of your listeners know as well, many people who have received a cancer diagnosis and undergone treatment, but largely continued their normal day-to-day life and routine.
Yeah, well,
And
Dwayne had cancer, but he never produced anything anyway, so no one noticed when he was going through chemo. But
yeah, that's
yeah,
true.
you're
But
right.
Dwayne did not have a phalanx of doctors and nurses and other caregivers around him with a special suite at one of the nation's leading hospitals that was just a short helicopter ride away from his front lawn. And that's what any president has at Walter Reed.
Yeah,
So
I don't get it. I don't get it. Now, Senator, you're on Intel. And when I was long ago and far away, when I had clearances and there would be a meeting with the then Attorney General Smith or then Attorney General Meese, we would get briefings from the CIA on the individuals coming in to see the AG if they were from a foreign country. And they would tell us about the individual, including mental acuity and how they got their job and what their background was. Do you suppose our enemies had a pretty good fix on Joe Biden's mental condition, physical condition?
Well, of course they did, Hugh, because normal Americans did. They could just watch what they saw in front of their eyes. They didn't need to have, the White House butler or the president's secretary on their payroll. I think most of them just saw with their own eyes that Joe Biden had been in fairly severe decline, not just when he was president, Hugh, or during the 2024 presidential debates, but all the way back to the 2020 campaign as well. So, I mean, the original sin, to use the title of the book that's coming out this week, was not Joe Biden running for re-election in 2024. It was probably running for election in the first place, and the Democrats locking arms around him then to help secure him the nomination, even though his decline was manifest at the time. So I think, of course, our adversaries had Joe Biden's number from the very beginning, before he was even in the White House in 2021.
Now, Mary Catherine Ham has raised the specter, which I was not really thinking about. They might need the money. Biden Inc. might just need the money. They might have needed to stay in office because the speeches have dried up and the paintings aren't selling now, for President Biden's son, Hunter. What do you make of that theory, Senator Cotton?
Back in 2019 and 2020?
Yeah.
Well, it's possible. I also think that's not mutually exclusive with Joe Biden's overwhelming, all-consuming ambition to be president going back to his young adulthood. I mean, remember, this is a man who was elected to the Senate before he was the constitutionally required age of 30. He turned 30 between his election and his swearing in. So this is not a man who lacked for ambition or the belief in himself to be president. And he had run twice before he finally was able to get into the White House. So it's possible. And, it seems like they had a pretty good grip going for 8 years when he was the vice president, and that they thought they might renew it if he was elected president. But I also don't think you should ever discount just the simple, bald, overwhelming ambition that Joe Biden manifested going back 50 years.
All right. Now, I did want to get a quick reaction from you to the president's Middle Eastern trip, which I've given an A+ to with an asterisk, the asterisk being not so sure about the Syria sanction lifting. What do you think, Senator Cotton?
Very successful trip, Hugh. This is a trip primarily about the economy and trade and finance deals, and he signed significant deals there. He did also announce that we'd be lifting sanctions on Syria. I think it's a time for Ahmed al-Shara, the new leader of Syria, to show, not tell. Frankly, he's been showing for about 6 months now, since they toppled the Assad tyranny in November. Our main interests in Syria are to ensure that any kind of instability does not radiate out through the Middle East as it did for the last 15 years of the Assad regime's tyranny, and also to make sure that Iran and Hezbollah don't use it as a foothold again. We've made that clear to al-Shara and his government. I suspect President Trump made that clear as well. There is a history of rogue regimes or even designated terrorists coming in from the cold, of not necessarily turning over a new leaf, not necessarily finding the goodness of God to redeem themselves, so that would be wonderful, but recognizing that it is in their interest to no longer antagonize the United States and our friends around the world. And if they do so, then we can, in kind, take steps such as removing sanctions, ultimately listing designations of terrorism, maybe even reestablishing the diplomatic relations. But the main thing we want from Syria is a stable country that has control of its own territory and in which Iran and terrorists and, frankly, Russia are not welcome. So let's see what al-Shara does.
Okay, well said. Thank you, Senator Cotton. I will be right back, America. Don't go anywhere. Except during the break, you can go over to HughHewitt.com, donate to Angel Tree Camp Fund. $200 sends a child to camp this summer for a week that they will never forget, a week that you will not know about until the hereafter, a week that can change the trajectory of a life. You can do that today at HughHewitt.com, or you can call 888-206-2764, 888-206-2764. $200 sends one kid to camp. Maybe you want to send four. The late Jim Inhofe called me up once, senator from Oklahoma, sent 5 kids to camp on the condition he could meet him when he was down in Oklahoma one day. What a great man. We miss him a lot. Angel Tree, 888-206-2764, or the banner at the top of HughHewitt.com. J.D. Vance was on Air Force 2 today, giving some thoughts on President Biden, former President Biden's diagnosis, cut number 2.
Yeah, look, I mean, first of all, of course, we wish the best for the former president's health. And, it sounds pretty serious, but hopefully he makes the right recovery. Look, I will say, whether the right time to have this conversation is now or at some point in the future, we really do need to be honest about whether the former president was capable of doing the job. And that's no, that you can separate the desire for him to have the right health outcome with the recognition that whether it was doctors or whether there were staffers around the former president, I don't think he was able to do a good job for the American people. And that's not politics. That's not because I disagreed with him on policy. That's because I don't think that he was in good enough health. In some ways, I blame him less than I blame the people around him.
Let's then go to Van Jones. You'll hear a little bit of David Axelrod. If you're watching on the Salem News Channel, you'll see a little bit of David in this cutout. Jake Tapper is interviewing Van Jones, and Van Jones gets very close to right over the target, cut number 17.
It's just not true.
Van, the big question is what now? What now for Democrats? And over the past week, we've seen some potential 2028 candidates, Pete Buttigieg, Governor Whitmer, Governor Pritzker, saying that they didn't know that this was going on, that they didn't know that there were any acuity or cognition issues. We've heard, I was busy working, I was too far away, I didn't see it. What do you think Democrats need to say? What is the right thing for Democrats to say? You heard Jim Clyburn acknowledge that possibly the party's low standing in polls does have to do with this.
Look, I think before you get out there trying to say stuff and persuade other people, you've got to look inside. In 2024, we got beat by W. John Kerry got swift-voted by Karl Rove, and suddenly we're looking at a president that we didn't like, George W. Bush, with a war that we thought was being fought badly, constitutional crisis, and triple red Senate, House, and White House. It took 3.5 years before Barack Obama emerged with a message. What do we do in the meantime? We looked inside. Donors got reorganized as the Democracy Alliance in 2005. Bloggers got reorganized as Huffington Post in 2005. Black voters got organized under Color of Change in 2005. And there was a deep internal reflection. I do not see that happening. I see people, rather than reorganizing, rethinking. Center for American Progress took off in 2005 and came up with a new set of ideas for Democrats. That has to happen. Before we get out here and start trying to tell people why they should like us, we need to look in the mirror, reorganize ourselves, get bad people and bad ideas out of the way, and then we'll be able to come forward in the midterms. But right now, we need to apologize to the American people that we were a part of something that wasn't on the up and up.
Van Jones, David Axelrod, thank you so much to both of you.
What's that mean? We were part of something that wasn't on the up and up. Good for Van for saying we. I don't know what members of the media think. I've got the receipts for me. I've got the receipts for pretty much everybody on Fox, everybody on Salem, everybody I know saying the president. I think I'm one of the first to use the word infirm. I'm pretty early to an accident scene on the Wuhan virus, on Joe Biden's infirmity. Don't know if I used it during the 2020 campaign. But if you go way back before Barack Obama picked him as vice president, I said, please, God, pick Biden. because I thought Slow Joe. I called him that for I don't know, Dwayne. How long did I call him Slow Joe for? 8 years? I guess he ran in 2008.
Well, yeah, we started calling him that in 2008 when he was when he was trying to run.
2000. I think I called him that in 2000. Whenever he would hold forth in a Supreme Court nominee hearing, and he was blowhard on Alito. He was a blowhard on he's always been a blowhard, and he's always been slow, not swift-witted, not clever, not funny. But I don't wish anyone the suffering of cancer, and maybe they'll find a miracle drug for him and it will be easy. But the whole thing stinks, and there ought to be hearings. That's what Congress exists for, to provide oversight. Let's talk to the doctors. Let's talk to Walter Reed. Let's talk to the people around him. Talk to Karine Jean-Pierre. She's on the record as saying he ran circles around her. Jeff Zients is the chief of staff. I'm beginning to suspect Ron Klain jumped ship 2 years in because he didn't want to be a part of this fiasco. It's like the boat hitting the bridge in the Baltimore harbor, and it all comes tumbling down in real time in front of our eyes. This is a nightmare. Stay tuned. I'll be right back, America. Sympathy, yes. I am unwilling, however, to believe anything they say from Team Biden. I am here to tell you that Vic Mattis does not like cars that start and stop automatically, and neither do I. You know, Vic, yesterday my daughter-in-law picked me up at the airport, and she's got one of those, and it stopped inconveniently. I don't think these things are going to stand the test of time in the marketplace. What do you think?
No, that's a good point, Hugh. I had the same question myself, and I think Mary Catherine brought up that studies show that the wear and tear over the stopping and starting is worse than the actual keep the motor running through the entire trip that you're making. And that's happened to me too, by the way. And you could find yourself in the middle of an intersection. I pointed this out on Getting Hammered, where you're turning your steering wheel, you're in the box, you're waiting to turn, but a bunch of cars are coming through. So you have your foot on the brake, the car shuts off, immediately the steering wheel locks, and if it's not straight, it will correct itself, and suddenly your hands are like entangled in that steering wheel, and then you got to restart it. Again, there are moments where even the restarting automatically, which is supposed to be very quick and efficient, there's a weird pause sometimes, and I find it to be very disconcerting. So it's good news that this nonsense is going to come to an end.
So, Vic, now, are you ever going to allow yourself to be driven by a car? I mean, automatic cars.
I did a test drive once of a Tesla that had this function, and I wrote about it for the Washington Free Beacon. It was eerie. I let it take over the wheel for me, as it were, on Interstate 66 here, and you see cars that are merging into the lane, and it does slow down, but I could not relinquish that control. To be honest, Hugh, I hate even doing cruise control. I'll try cruise control for a couple miles, and they're like, that's it. I got to have my foot on this thing. I get restless. No, I find that to be.
I'm never going there, but I just want to know if the youngs must use it, and they must not have heard of blind spots. I don't know how in the world they work with blind spots. Now, Vic, tell me about your jury duty with a guy who was a zookeeper.
That's right. I've served on, I believe I was on 2 juries in the District of Columbia over a span of years, Hugh. And one of them, it was a case where we found the defendant not guilty. And in another case, we found them all guilty. And in that case, I was actually a foreman. And we were there for several days. So you get to know
you were a foreman
in the room. I was.
I always make fun of foremen. Foremen are people that you are usually want to be foremen, and you don't want someone who wants to be a foreman to be a foreman. Or were you elected when you were out of the room?
Yeah, I did not choose to be a foreman. The other people in the room chose me. And I had a great difficulty. I tell you, it was really hard, saying guilty, even though we all felt 100% that these people were guilty for this particular case. It's a weird thing to do, to hand down that sort of judgment where the judge asks you that. But you get to know a lot of people, and one of them was a zookeeper at the National Zoo, and he had amazing stories.
Well, that's what I want to know. Hey, I had a South Korean pastor. I've been on one jury in my life, a hung jury, went 2 weeks. A guy was subsequently retried and convicted. Three-striker, he's throwing a Hail Mary. And it was 11-1. Spouse of a public defender, never going to vote to convict. Bad mail-it-in prosecutor, bad job. But I got to know everybody. The South Korean pastor would fall asleep every morning because he'd get up at 4 o'clock in the morning to pray, and he had to be at jury duty at 8, and his congregation would get together. So you meet the most interesting people. But when you said a zookeeper, what time do they get to the zoo in the morning?
Yeah, I think they get in pretty early, if you ask me. He had experiences with orangutans, which are very dangerous, by the way. If one happens to grab your arm, you're supposed to go completely limp because they will tear you from limb to limb. And I don't know if you remember the National Zoo. They would have the orangutans. They would cross the cables over pedestrian walkways. And the way that they pulled it off is these little towers were electrified so that there was no chance an orangutan would want to come down and then mix it up or intermingle with tourists. But one orangutan actually one time decided to deal with the electric voltage just to make it down to the ground. And that was a pretty scary story, he told me.
Well, what did they do?
Well, everybody ran away, and then the orangutan started dumping over garbage cans, and they finally they tranquilized the fella, put him to sleep, and then they brought him back in. But I mean, it's really scary.
There are scenes in a lot of police movies and army movies where everyone goes to the rifle locker and they start grabbing the rifles and they start handing them out. So they must have a dart gun locker, right? At the National Zoo, they must have something that they go and they dart gun the orangutan. But he told you you're supposed to go limp with your arm?
Yes. Don't resist. Absolutely. They will. And that was a baby orangutan that had gotten a hold of his wrist. And he's a full grown man by the time other zoo security people came in to take care of the situation. And again, I guess, put him to sleep or whatnot. He had torn the guy's clothes into pieces.
What? You know what? I just got to pursue that. Did you get more details on this? Because I think there's a TV series in this, the Zookeeper's Travails. But was he in there long?
Yeah, I mean, this is for, I don't know, maybe 15 minutes. And by that time, the young orangutan had just ripped the poor guy's pants off. I mean, you can't do anything about it. You got to be like the doll for this orangutan. I mean, they're really strong.
Where was Mama Orangutan?
I don't know. I don't know what happened there. I don't have those particular details, but it's a fascinating.
Keep the guy's number. I'll interview him on the radio. I would love to talk to a zookeeper. Don't you think zookeepers have a lot of stories we don't know about?
Yeah, I mean, they have a lot of stories, including some scary ones and some really dark and tragic ones. I won't share it with you here, but I mean, especially at the National Zoo, people do crazy things, Hugh. So yeah, they have a lot of stories.
There is a children's book about where all the animals follow. I've read it to my grandchildren. All the animals follow the zookeeper home at night. It goes extremely well, and then the zookeeper wife wakes up and takes them back to the zoo. That's not how it works, I imagine, at the National Zoo. But are you a big zoo person, by the way, Vic?
I used to. I love animals, and I'm very familiar with that book too, Hugh. I was always concerned about the zoning situation where the home is right next to the zoo, because they went right across the backyard. It's very disconcerting.
I love that book. My grandkids love that book. I wish I could remember the name of it. Vic Madison and have you ever watched Jury Duty, Vic? You got to watch Jury Duty. Oh, go find it. Go find it on cable. Don't go anywhere in America except to Getting Hammered. Vic Madison, Mary Catherine Ham on Getting Hammered Podcast Extraordinaires. Pope Leo XIV had a special meeting today with rabbis and Jewish lay leaders, emphasizing, quote, because of the Jewish roots of Christianity, all Christians have a special relationship with Judaism, the Pope said. The theological dialogue between Christians and Jews remains ever important and close to my heart. Even in these difficult times marked by conflicts and misunderstandings, it is necessary to continue the momentum of this precious dialogue of ours. Bravo, Leo. It's exactly carrying on in the John Paul the Great tradition of a continuing rapprochement between the Roman Catholic faith and Judaism. And I'm glad to see him devoting an early meeting in his papacy to just that. I have made the switch to consumer cellular I hope you will consider doing it as well. You can have savings without sacrifice in service. You can have savings without sacrifice of your number. You can keep your number. You can keep your data. You can keep your digits. You can keep everything if you want. You can start over. Up to you. Completely up to you. Call 1-800-411-4454. That number is there on the Salem News Channel screen. If you're watching on the Salem News Channel, 1-800-411-4454. And savings without sacrifice means this. Big Cellular wants you to buy as much data as you want, as they can possibly sell you, and more data than you need. And therefore, they're going to be pushing unlimited data on you at high prices. Well, if you need unlimited data, you got teenagers in the house or gamers in the house, whatever. You need unlimited data, 2 lines, unlimited data, $60 a month, second month free when you use my name, Hugh. Or if you want a lower data plan, maybe you use only 10 gigs a month or 5 gigs a month. You can talk to a counselor from Consumer Cellular. You make the switch in minutes, and you'll be talking to a live American human being within 30 seconds, 45 seconds max, sometimes 15 seconds if you call 1-800-411-4454, or simply go to consumercellular.com/Hugh. Don't forget, we had in the next hour, I'm in the Relief Factor Beltway studio, inside the Beltway, because of Relief Factor. They set me up north, they set me up out west, they set me up here. And basically the same look wherever I go, and the same Relief Factor every single day. Did 6 this morning, 4 tomorrow on tap. Going to rain later in the week. I'm averse to rain. I did a 10K in the rain on Saturday up north, and it was fine, but I'm really not looking forward to doing it. But it was Saturday, and I'd do a 10K, so I did. Relief Factor, just make sure that the minor aches and pains that come with exercise and aging do not bother you. 4 supplements, Icarian and curcumin, resveratrol, omega. I took them in the first hour. If you were watching on the Salem News Channel, you saw me do it. If you were listening on one of my affiliates, you heard me do it. Every single day, every single show, every single hour. I will take it once and remind you twice. Don't leave home without it. Put it next to your shaving equipment, put it in the bathroom, put it on the shelf. Next to your vitamin, take Relief Factor every day, and you will thank me. You will thank me. Joined by Jonathan Williams, president of the American Legislative Exchange Council, ALEC.org. Hello, Jonathan. How are you today?
Well, I am doing great, my friend, and we've got some fun things moving in Washington this week, but also some great things at ALEC.
Yeah, we will catch up on the budget bill when it gets over more hurdles. I want to find out about your new task force you have launched over at the American Legislative Exchange Council. Nonpartisan, been around for a long time. They do great stuff. You are starting a task force to look into voting, into process and procedures on election integrity. Tell us about it.
Well, it's a really exciting day here at ALEC, and just on Friday, our board of directors got together and authorized the creation of this new task force to really look at what are the protections at the heart of our constitutional republic. And, that the idea is that American citizens should be in charge to decide the fate of our elections. And this is a common sense American belief with 80 or 90% of support. And in fact, you have to kind of scratch your head once in a while to wonder who are those 10% of Americans that don't believe in citizen-only voting. But this is something that our legislators at ALEC came to us and said, we would be remiss as an organization of state legislators if it didn't tackle this crisis and confidence around our elections. And what can we do at the state level to empower our ALEC legislators to lead the way when it comes to restoring that American confidence in elections?
Now, process and procedure are 2 words that mean a lot of different things, but in the context of elections, they mean to me transparency and reliability. I voted in California between 1989 and 2015, and the vote goes on for months in California because votes can arrive maybe 10 days after an election if they're postmarked, and overseas votes, and they change all the time, and they count sometimes, and other times they don't count. And then in Florida, they're done in about 3 hours. Why is that?
Well, they learned their lesson in Florida, right? I mean, you had Jeb Bush and some great folks come in to say we can't really repeat this mistake again that we saw that took us forever to figure out who had won. And I think that's the key element is states like Florida have been leading the way on election integrity and better processes when it comes to finding results right away. One of the things that Alec has been working on for a while is raising awareness around the problems with things like ranked choice voting and why it takes some of these cities like New York City a couple of months to figure out who actually won. You look at items like that. Look at items like common sense issues to say only American citizens should vote. I know we chatted about that maybe last year when Glenn Youngkin was looking to make sure that reform was made in Virginia. So we're talking about some very common sense 80 or 90% issues that should be something that Republicans, Democrats, independents, libertarians, vegetarians, everybody can get behind.
Well, I'm not sure about vegetarians. They might want, I don't know. I won't speak for them, but I do, because Alec is a supporter of mine and of the program, they sent me the data. 73% of registered voters believe mail-in ballots should arrive by Election Day. 75%, that's 3 out of 4, that's way up there, support requiring photo ID to vote, and 84% want states to routinely remove deceased, relocated, or non-citizens from the voter rolls. You know, Jonathan, after I left California, I got votes delivered to my old house for at least 2 cycles. It's ridiculous.
Well, there's so many examples of that. And it's not just Chicago, where they still have dead people likely voting from past elections. But I mean, this is something that everyone has a personal example. They know they've heard from a neighbor or a friend that things need to be tightened up. And this should not be a partisan issue. This should be an issue of not who wins, but how we go about choosing that so Americans across the board can have real confidence again in the integrity of the election process.
Well, I salute Alec for touching the third rail. Lots of people on the left go crazy when you talk about voter ID. I don't know why. We show ID whenever we travel. I just got my new super duper ID. That means I don't have to take my passport with me to go, on a 1-hour puddle jumper. Now my real ID works. So I don't understand why anyone would object to voter ID. Have you ever had it explained to you why?
Well, it's all about political talking points of the progressive left. And for some reason, they don't want people to show ID. And I haven't figured it out myself, but it's been something we at ALEC and our members have been attacked at really for years. And it has made no sense whatsoever since when you board a plane or go to the store and buy products of adult age, you have to show ID. And that's something that should be done at the very least for elections.
Now, one other model act that you folks came up with that I don't have the details on in my background memo, the School Board Election Date Act. You do model policies. So ALEC will produce model laws, much like the ALI, American Law Institute, will do stuff on torts, and ALEC does stuff on all sorts of different things. Why a model law on School Board Election Date Act? What's that all about?
Well, this is something that's pretty common sense in that we ought to have elections be on election day, right? And not voting for months before the election like we see in some states now, Hugh. Election day ought to mean something, and especially when it comes to high-profile school board races or even bond elections. That's something that those that want to have really low turnout to benefit their cause, whether that is increasing local debt with bond elections or maybe electing these left-wing folks to school boards across the country because they can rely on a motivated turnout base, let's say of the teachers unions. That's a real problem for Americans. And so having a consensus and high turnout elections where we decide not just President of the United States and Congress and state legislature, but involving all these important issues at the local level, whether that is school board elections or whether that's bond elections, this ought to be decided by a large number of people, not a very small number of people that are turned out, let's say, by the teachers unions.
Your wonderful team sent me a note about the fact that you also had worked to keep politics out of pension elections, along with the model policy. So you're doing cleanup voting at every level for all elections with common sense. I can't believe anyone opposes you on this, Jonathan. Are you getting blowback on it?
Well, I'm sure we will from the usual haters out there, but that's okay because we have the American people on our side and we have the truth on our side. And this is something that should be done across the country, as you mentioned, Hugh, at all levels of government. It's obviously the state and local responsibility of elections. And that's why I think Alec is such an important voice on this with our trusted policy solutions that our legislators are so excited to go take. This isn't the first time we've talked about these issues. We've been staunch defenders of the electoral college against the onslaught of this national popular vote compact that's been pushed by progressives. We've been defending against ranked choice voting, supporting citizens only voting, and we're really excited to go even further and talk about some of these common sense reforms in states all across the country.
Alec is where people go to get common sense update on common sense resolutions to problems that plague all 50 states. But federalism is a laboratory experiment. 50 different laboratories. If you want to find out about the state of the states, sign up for the ALEC newsletter, alec.org/Hugh. You'll get it once a week. Now, Jonathan, I want to close by asking, if states improve their voting laws, will they move up in rich states, poor states.org? I'm always trying to figure out the inside baseball to give Ohio a little bit of the edge to overcome your state up north bias. Is this going to figure out there too?
Well, I don't know about that, but I think stay tuned because we'll be likely developing some election integrity rankings that we can use, and we'll see how Ohio comes out. Maybe we'll fare better than in rich states, poor states versus Michigan.
I do think people would like to know how you would rank states. California will be last. I am absolutely sure, although ranked choice voting in Maine drives my in-laws crazy. Jonathan, as a general matter, last quick question. Do you hate ranked choice voting as much as I do?
Well, it's a horrible idea. Even if you believe in a theoretical context of it, it doesn't work in practice because you have no idea who wins for the longest time, right? And this is maybe one way that we'll rank the states is, do you know your results on election night or don't you? Is it going to take you weeks or months to know the result? It's difficult enough trying to follow some of these long ballots in states across the country, let alone ranked choice voting. And, it's a confusing thing, Hugh.
What is the theory behind it? Why do people support ranked choice voting except to confuse electorates?
I don't know. It's never been explained to me all that clearly as to why individuals support it. I really don't know. I haven't heard that in a coherent way. To me, it's exactly the same problem I think that you have with it. It's just awfully confusing. If elections aren't confusing enough for some Americans, I think this makes it even more so. And then, of course, we don't get timely election results, which is a major problem.
Jonathan Williams, always a pleasure. Follow Jonathan on X at Tax Economist. And I remind you, the American Legislative Exchange Council, if you're a state legislator or married to one, have them join ALEC. They're smart people doing smart stuff on behalf of everyone. They're nonpartisan. They're just a group of smart people taking the best that the states have to offer. Sign up for the State of the States newsletter at alec.org/Hugh. So honored to have their sponsorship. Bethany Mandel joins me now. She was gone last week, off on some frolic and detour, but she connected me up with the Project Benjamin. I am very grateful for the Operation Benjamin. How are you, Bethany? And thank you. That was a wonderful group to be connected with.
Aren't they amazing? So I was actually in Rome with them, but off doing other things. And so Shalom had the pocket of time to talk to you. I'm so glad you did. They're incredible. I love them.
Well, I already had one listener send me a message saying they're going to contribute to Operation Benjamin, and I don't doubt that more people will when they hear about it. Are they having success in raising money?
The more money they raise, the more headstones they can switch over. So the more, the merrier. It's such a wonderful organization. They're doing such incredible work. And it's not just the headstone itself. It's telling the stories of these soldiers. It's bringing the families closure. There was one family there who he never knew where his uncle died his entire life. They just knew he was killed in action. And while he was at the cemetery outside of Rome, he found his uncle's name on the killed in action list at that cemetery. And that for whatever reason, it wasn't online. And he only knew with certainty that his uncle died at that spot because he saw him on the wall while we were there burying another soldier.
Wow. All right, now, Bethany, I want to move to the present. That's wonderful. OperationBenjamin.org. If you want to help find and appropriately mark the remains of American soldiers who died in World War I and World War II, who are Jewish and were interred under the Christian cross by mistake, honest mistake, no blame involved. They're just doing the work, and it's great. Bethany, your thoughts on what's going on in Gaza right now? I talked with Haviv Reddy Gore for 45 minutes the hour before the show. It's posted over at YouTube. And we went over a lot of stuff, but let's at the end I talked with him about Gaza. What do you think about Gaza now?
I genuinely don't understand what Israel's objective is. Today they announced that they're going to start allowing humanitarian aid back into the Strip. We saw today the largest anti-Hamas protests that we've ever seen in the Strip, and it's a direct result of the fact that Israel is not supplying its enemy with humanitarian resources anymore. So the fact that they were doing so brought Idan Alexander, I think, out of captivity. That strategy seemed to have been bearing fruit. I don't understand the strategy. My friend Lahav Harkov, who writes for Jewish Insider, wrote today in their newsletter. I strongly recommend folks sign up for the Jewish Insider newsletter. And she wrote, like, what is the end game? And that's the question that I think everyone is asking here. Now that all of the Sinwars have been killed, has Hamas been defeated? I don't know.
My guess at the end game, which I speculate with Haviv, is that the Gaza citizenry will be pushed south into the ocean, that Gaza City will be leveled, and Khan Yunis will be leveled, and refugee camps will be established, and it will start over again, but there's going to be a much bigger buffer, and the tunnels will be destroyed. I don't think there is any other end game than that. Do you think I might be on to a pretty close approximation of the plan?
I mean, Rafah was I think a bigger issue than Gaza City and Khan Yunis. That was where a lot of the hostages were held. So I mean, they need to have a clear end game here. I think that's the frustration on the part of a lot of Israelis. My friend Lahav's husband just rejoined his reserve unit. And, Israeli families are at their limits. This is an all-volunteer army, and the vast majority of these folks are men with families and steady jobs. They're not full-time soldiers. And so I'm sensing from my Israeli friends a real sense of frustration that there just doesn't seem to be an end goal here.
Well, there are 5 divisions now in Gaza. So that is a lot of the permanent army. The reservists, I'm sure, are doing Judea, Samaria, working up on the Lebanon border. But 5 divisions tells me they're going street by street and tunnel by tunnel. And Hamas has got one way. They can raise a white flag and go to Tehran, or they're going to die. We're down to brass tacks now, and they should give up the hostages and go to Tehran. That's their choice.
Yeah, I was speaking to someone very high up in the administration about a month ago, and that person was telling me that the sticking point for a lot of the negotiations was Mohammed Sinwar, because he was hiding in a tunnel and wouldn't come out, and so they couldn't get movement on the hostage negotiations because they couldn't get the rat to come out of his hole. And now that the rat has been killed in his hole, I'm hoping that this signals a turning point in the war that will hopefully, make the Hamas leadership, whatever remains of it, come to the realization that it's time to just give up the vote.
A last question. I listened to Dan Senor's Call Me Back State of World Jewry address that he gave at the 92nd Street Y last week. Have you listened to that yet?
I have not, no.
I'll give you a huge recommend because it makes the argument for doing what you're doing, which is, if you're going to raise your kids Jewish, raise them Jewish. Give them the immersive experience and make sure that not only are they proud Jews, they're strong Jews, and they're willing to stand up for Israel and for American Jewry and the diaspora. I don't think this is going to be a reveal to you at all. But do they go to Jewish camp in the summer?
Yes. It's costing me $30,000. Not that I'm counting, but it's $30,000.
She said with obvious eagerness for the summer to begin. Bethany Mandel, thank you. Follow Bethany at Bethany Shondark on X. Thank you for the recommendation last week as well, Bethany. Speaking of summer camp, our friends at Prison Fellowship are running summer camps for the children of mothers and fathers who are incarcerated. Everyone deserves to go to summer camp and get a bee sting. I'm kidding. You'll get poison ivy or something, but you'll get canoeing and rafting, and you'll have a giant blob that you'll jump off onto. And some kids will learn to swim, and other kids won't. Some kids will make lanyards. I was pretty good at lanyards. That's about all. Didn't do too well at archery. What a surprise there. And I will tell you, though, Camp Notre Dame on the shores of Lake Erie in Erie, Pennsylvania was my summer camp. Kids don't forget camp. And kids who have mom and or dad in prison really don't forget camp because they go back again and again. Let's listen to Betsy Wright, the camp director for Prison Fellowship Angel Tree Camping.
We hear it all the time that they're so excited to go and then they're crying on the way home because it was just such a great experience and they don't want to leave. Like, what an impact to be able to see kids in your situation that maybe went to camp and now they're working at camp and they are making a difference in the lives of others, and to see that, hey, I can do that too. It's just amazing.
You're not only taking care of the kids, you're taking care of the parents. You know that the parents are greatly relieved and greatly grateful. They haven't got $200. If mom and or dad is in jail, they haven't got $200 to go to camp. Every $200 contribution made at the top of HughHewitt.com, and it says, make a difference in the lives of prisoners' children. That's what the banner says. You can't miss the banner. Not even a Steelers fan can miss the banner. And if you can't afford $200, do a half scholarship. Someone else will match $100, and that you'll send a kid to camp. And you'll never know about it until your next life, but then you'll meet that person and you'll say, hey, did you enjoy camp? And they'll say, yeah, I love the squirt gun fight at night. There's the flashlights at the start, wherever it is. Angel Tree does a wonderful job. Go visit the banner at the top of Hugh Hewitt or call 888-206-2764, 888-206-2764, and please do it today. Earlier today, I caught up with Haviv Ret-Hagur, Senior Times of Israel correspondent on conflict, host of Ask Haviv Anything. The entire interview is already posted at YouTube, Hugh Hewitt YouTube channel. I recommend all of it to you. Here's a little bit more of it for your enjoyment. With the here and now in Gaza. In the 1960s, the study of American civilization went down hard in America's universities, not long followed thereafter in secondary schools, except for sectarian schools of any sort, where a story of civilization was told that usually would begin with Genesis and with the Greeks and Socrates, and then it would build from there. If you lose all that and you just start doing TikTok, you're going to be susceptible to venom. And venom gets into younger people more quickly, and you end up with Butler Library at Columbia campus a year and a half after 10/7 being occupied by idiots, by morons. And they're not stupid, they're just ignorant of everything. And the only way out of this, and Dan didn't talk about this, is really in America, I don't know, it's not the case for it, but in America, it's to reintroduce education about how we got here, how Western civilization is the key, and how Israel is the key to Western civilization, one of two keys, Athens being, along with Jerusalem, the beginning. So with that said, what would Israel do to try and, you had this discussion about international law, and I'm 100% with you. I took international law from Jacob Stein in 1883, and we laughed about it then. It's everybody's idea about what ought to be done with no enforcement mechanisms, and now it's even being perversely put to use. I thought your takedown of the idea of international law was complete and satisfactory to me, and I know international lawyers hate it. But what do we do to rebuild some kind of sense of what is good, true, and right in every situation? You know, categorical imperative stuff.
I'm a big optimist. I have a funny feeling, I have a sneaking suspicion that what is good is also what works. And what is true, or what is more true, nobody knows the perfect truth, but the more true aligns better with reality and will make you more successful in real life. And so reality will test us all. Progressive ideas, some progressive ideas are great. I mean, look, I'm Israeli on healthcare. I'm to the left of Bernie Sanders. Okay, so just when I say progressive ideas, I mean the specific ideas that are controversial and under debate, right? Progressive ideas shattered not because conservatives defeated them in some formal debate. They shattered because they met reality and crashed. And everywhere they defunded the police was a disaster for minorities. And everywhere, the blue states are just poorly run because they're so busy wasting money on things that don't work. So reality gets a say. And the debate is not about what morally should be true. The debate is also about how does reality work and how do we do the best within that reality. So if you want to legislate war out of existence, you will be ignored because war is still going to happen in human civilization, and you will have legislated yourself out of the conversation. If you want harm to civilians to be mitigated in war, you can legislate that you are allowed to win a war, but you have to, in every way that doesn't prevent you from winning the war, mitigate civilian harm. That is actually what international law says and is supposed to say. So, for example, if Hamas operates in a hospital, that hospital is a target of war. Hospitals are protected, but they're not immune. And Hamas committed the terrible war crime of entering that hospital operationally. That is true, and it is simple truth, and every international lawyer will admit it. And if the International Committee of the Red Cross pretends that is not the case, that Hamas can operate out of a hospital and then they're immune to Israeli attack, then that is a fiction. And it is a fiction that does not exist in the Geneva Conventions and is intended to prevent Israel from winning. It is intended to give Hamas that leg up. If international law will be a weapon of war, it will be ignored, it will be destroyed, it will be demolished. The chief prosecutor of the International Criminal Court issued arrest warrants against the Israeli former defense minister and prime minister. He did it in a procedure and a process that is totally unique compared to other warrants issued by the ICC. He did it quickly. He did it without consulting with the Israelis. And we now know from Wall Street Journal reporting and many others that he did it, he expedited those warrants without getting Israeli feedback even, which is a preliminary stage of issuing such warrants, in order to cover for the fact that there are multiple serious sexual assault allegations against him that have now caused him to be suspended from his position. Well, if you're the Israelis and you can't measure law on whether the person committed the crime. Okay, let's imagine the Israelis are criminals. International law is still crashing because of its politicized prejudice against Israel. And in other words,
he's so right. He's so right. And that guy at the ICC has set back the ICC for a century, and I think that's great because he abused the process to try and protect his own skin, and it didn't work. David Bahnsen is my friend. He runs the Bahnsen Group. He is an advisor to people with a lot of money to worry about, and I wanted to bring him on today because I made a comment on X over the weekend that David Bahnsen ought to be charged with teaching financial literacy to 18-year-olds. And David, you made the mistake that said you would be willing to do that, so now I want to make you do that. Before you get out of high school, what should a kid know about investment and savings?
Well, first of all, they shouldn't learn about investment and savings until they've learned about economics. And you can't learn about economics without understanding a few things about the human person. So you got to start with some basic first principles. Then you go to economics. Then we get to do the fun stuff about money. And of course, once you're doing the fun stuff about money, the number one thing for young people is avoidance of mistakes. So we can teach someone about compounding of capital, and then people tune out because they think, well, I don't have capital to compound. So all your talk about 401ks and Roth IRAs and compound interest and stock market returns over time don't mean anything to me. By the way, I want to go out with my friends on Friday night. What's this credit card you sent me? And next thing you know, they've graduated from school. They have a big credit card balance and student debt. Avoidance of debt is what they need to learn in an early age.
Now, I know we have kids in cars right now driving home. Some of them are listening against their will because mom or dad has the radio on in the car or maybe the Salem News Channel on at home. And I want them to, what I do to my law students, if they bring a Starbucks into the class, I will do the opportunity cost of a Starbucks habit in front of the entire class. I will do that again and again and again to drive home the fact that these small decisions we make have massive implications. But when you say they've got to understand human behavior before economics and economics before investing, what about human behavior do they need to do? The willingness to defer pleasure?
Well, that is certainly a wonderful principle to learn, but why is the willingness to defer pleasure even important? In other words, Hugh, I'm incapable of teaching this the right way without starting with the first principles, which are what a market is. Starbucks is a marketplace. I have money, they have coffee, they want my money, I want their coffee. We do a voluntary exchange. It's subject to laws of supply and demand. That's easy enough. But why do I want coffee? What is it we want out of our lives? How can we make our lives better by making the lives of others better? These are moral principles that start with the Garden of Eden. So I have to start with the basic reality of created design, what God made the human being for. We talk as if the spontaneous order that Friedrich Hayek taught us about, that markets have a certain spontaneity to them, which I agree with 100%, that it came from nowhere. It came from God making us with reason and rationality. And what I'm saying, Hugh, is him making us in his image. I don't think we could ever fully appreciate economics, let alone finance, if we don't understand these basic first principles.
Okay, work with me in a public school setting. We're not going to be able to smuggle Genesis in. We are going to be able to
I can smuggle Genesis into a public school.
Okay, but should we teach this to high school students? Should we teach them on whether it's principles, economics, or markets? Should we spend a year getting them ready not to be impoverished by poor choices?
Yes, you should at least do a semester, and it should definitely be driven by avoiding the impoverishment of poor choices. The problem with politicians demanding it is politicians are the ones who have run up $36 trillion of national debt. So there's a certain irony in personal finance being commended to us by people that have no concept of national finance. But be that as it may, I do agree with you that young people should learn financial literacy. Their parents should be modeling it, and it should start with these basic concepts about delayed gratification, thrift, opportunity cost, and so forth. And there is no adult who is going to all of a sudden develop personal responsibility at age 30. It has to start before age 20.
Now, David, you wrote a great book on work. Have you written a book for kids about money?
No, but it is something I have been burdened to do for some time, and to put together a bit of a video series, a curriculum, the reading materials and video lectures that go with it, whether it's 5 parts, 6 parts, something reasonably succinct. I want to do it. But again, Hugh, I'm not going to, it's not that I'm going to Bible thump it up, but I want it to be rooted to certain basic principles. And I think it has more power that way. When we talk about
your book on work
debt,
wasn't Bible thumping. Your book on work was it was natural law.
Well, there was a whole chapter devoted to Genesis's teaching about it. I mean, it was pretty rooted to my faith commitments.
Yeah, but it wasn't. When I say Bible thumping, you didn't throw a bunch of verses at me and tell me that was the story. And I really do think the need here is so pressing that I hope you do this. I hope you do it on video, because on video, you have a chance, the shorter the better, right? If you can make them 5-minute videos, it's like PragerU stuff. And
yeah.
And do your clients at the Bahnsen Group, do they ever ask you to come into the family office and talk to the kids?
All the time, and we do it all the time. And then I get to do it with a specific family in the context of their own family, their situation, because you talk to a family that's used to a certain level of income and lifestyle, and then a different family at a very different, there's a contextualization that matters in the way you teach the younger generation. I really do know this is something I need to do. I want to get it organized, and I agree with you. Short snippets of videos are very powerful, and that kind of PragerU model. And it's more than just avoiding debt. It's understanding why. It's getting into even things about taxes, withholdings, Roth IRAs. You know, I know you're a big believer in the compounding out of retirement accounts. All of those things matter. But I think that avoidance of the big financial mistakes, that's what we're not teaching kids now. Then they're going off and making the 2 biggest mistakes you can make right away in life, which is running up credit card debt in college and taking on a bunch of student debt. That has to stop.
The Bahnsen effect is what we're going to call this when he puts this when you put this YouTube series out, David, I will push it hard because, and can we add one more? Don't gamble. What do you think about internet gambling? It's nuts.
Well, of course it is. Now, I'd include other things that really count as internet gambling too, with some of the crypto speculation and crazy stock trading. All of it comes down to the same thing, the desire for an easy buck.
And that is not going to happen. David Bahnsen, always a pleasure to see you. Follow him at David Bahnsen, the Bahnsen Group. If you need some advice, give him a call. He's not my guy, but he should be yours. I saved the very best cut for last that Dwayne found today. Deputy Director of the Office of Management and Budget is a former Congressman, Dan Bishop. Here's what he said on Fox News this morning, cut number 13.
We were pleased to see the progress through the Budget Committee, and now it's important for everybody to work together to get it to the floor of the House. It needs to be done timely. We've got to get it through the Senate after that, but it's a great opportunity. You know, I spent 5 years in Congress before coming to be Russ Vogt's deputy at OMB, and I waited for an opportunity like this. This bill has $1.6 trillion in savings, and by that measure, it's the best that's been advanced to this point since 1997. It has a lot of resources to get the border secure, provide important defense priorities. It really is something that we need to, and also extend tax cuts for Americans. And so we've got to get it done. I know there's always a hard thing to get legislation through at the last minute, but this is the one big, beautiful bill is exactly as President Trump called for. It's time to get it through.
All right. Now, what I like about Dan Bishop is he's been there. That's why I have John Campbell on once a week. When you can talk to former members of Congress, they actually know how difficult it is to get everyone into a room, get them corralled, and narrow majority, 6-vote majority. But it can change the trajectory of the United States. It can begin to close the gap, and it will unleash economic growth. We'll be in for the Trump economy 2.0, this time without COVID shutting it down. We pray the Chinese don't submarine us again, but we got to get it done. So please go to taxcutsnow.com. Our friends from Job Creators Network have got that working. They'll put them in touch with your congressman. Don't forget Relief Factor. I'm in the Relief Factor studio inside the Beltway, and I will be until Friday next when I head off on the Hillsdale cruise. And Dwayne will be guest hosting, and we've got Mark Davis and Kurt Schlichter and Ed Morrissey lined up for 2 weeks of my time with the Hillsdale faithful, hillsdale.edu, or go to hillsdalecollegecruise.com. See if they have any late cancellations. I think the boat is full. But hillsdalecollegecruise.com. But I'm going to take my Relief Factor with me, because even at sea, you can do your miles. You just have to walk in circles again and again and again, or run in circles or trundle in circles. And you can lift weights. You can do whatever you want. But here I am to tell you, if you're climbing steps in ports of call that you want to go up and down, that'll make your knees bark a little bit. That's why Relief Factor on cruises makes so much of a difference. I carry in curcumin, resveratrol, omega. If you watch in the first hour on the Salem News Channel, I always take it on the air so you can see me taking it. I want you to know I only use supplements. I only use products. I only advertise products. I only allow them to sponsor the show if I believe in them. I believe in Relief Factor because it really does work. I haven't taken any other supplement for more than 20 years. I've had other prescriptions, but not supplements. I'm not a supplement guy. But Relief Factor made the bitch to me over a decade ago, and doggone it, doesn't work. It does work so effectively, doggone it, if it doesn't work so effectively. 6 miles this morning, ran a 10K on Saturday, feel great, looking forward to the morning, as you will if you get Relief Factor. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Harley. Thank you, Generalissimo. I'll see you on Jesse Waters tonight at 8.